Hello there, little masters, and welcome once again to the Prancing Pony Podcast, where tonight we're crying in our glass of the good stuff.
West to Hall, my friends. I'm Shawn Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, the Aragorn to my Aemir, Alan Sisto.
Aha! Thank you, Shawn. Folks, if you haven't figured it out yet, tonight's episode is on Chapter 20 of the Silmarillion, of the fifth battle, Nirnaeth Arnoediad. We finally get to the tragic account of the Battle of Unnumbered Tears.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably be calling it the Battle of Unnumbered Tears as much as possible, just to avoid having to pronounce Nirnaeth Arnoediad more than we have to.
That's quite a cinder and tongue twister.
It is, and now we both had a chance to butcher it, although I think we probably did okay.
Well, you know, the episode is young.
Yeah, it's true.
On that note, though, let's start at the beginning, which, as we've said before, is a very good place to start. Does old Bartleman have anything in his bag for us tonight, Shawn?
Yeah, he's got one for us tonight that I think, I hope that we can answer pretty quickly.
Let's see.
Ryan M. in Appleton, Wisconsin wrote in to say, I keep wondering how all the people in the First Age were getting fed, especially the soldiers involved in the siege of Angband. With the arrival of the Noldor and men, Beleriand starts getting pretty crowded. I have not found any reference to agriculture or domestication of animals that would likely be needed to feed these burgeoning realms, much less their ability to be protected from bands of orcs, spiders, and all the other great perils of the First Age.
Good point.
I don't think Tolkien ever he's still Ryan.
Question goes
here.
on. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think Tolkien ever references exact populations, but and I'll paraphrase a little, based on the size of the armies at the Nirnaeth Arnoediad, some have surmised a population of over 1 million elves, men, and dwarves in Beleriand during the First Age. So Ryan says, where did all those rations come from? I don't see how a hunter-gatherer society can support that population and those huge armies. He goes on to say, I mean, there's only so many fish in the River Syrian. Well said. Good point. Yeah. Good question. And, you know, another one of our listeners, Tarek in Chicago, asks a similar question that we answered part of a few weeks ago when we talked about whether the elves ate meat.
Right.
We talked about that with the first part of Baron and Luthien. Tarek had also asked about whether the elves actually domesticated animals.
Ah.
You know, ironically, I did find the answer to Ryan's question while reading ahead for our next episode. Oh. In the Lay of the Children of Húrin, which is the verse the verse version of the story of Turin Turambar and the Lays of Beleriand, there's a passage. I want to say it's around. Well, if my notes here are correct, it's lines 1783 to 1805. Where
I hope that's your notes, because if you remembered the line that it's in,
it's definitely my notes. And I
find a replacement for me.
And they're handwritten notes, so you know, who knows if they're accurate. But Turin comes to Nargothrond, and then Tolkien actually describes the farmland outside Nargothrond, and of course, he doesn't use normal language. It's Tolkien, so he's got all these great archaisms. He talks about lees and leasos, which I looked up in our pastures.
I'm glad you looked that up. I would have no clue what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
L-E-A?
So,
L-E-A-S?
Yeah, the plural is L-E-A-S.
Okay.
And L-E-A, Lee, I guess would be the singular. And then leaso is another form of the same word.
Okay.
So these are pastures. So if they had pastures, they must have had livestock to graze them.
Certainly.
He talks about teeming tilth, which is, you know, tilled land or farmed land. And he talks about orchards. So clearly, at least there, we have some evidence that Tolkien's elves were farmers. They weren't just hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
I hoped that Christopher Tolkien would give us a little bit of commentary that would shed some light on it. But unfortunately, Christopher's comment on this
was... no?
Yeah, no, his comment on this, I pulled it out just because it's classic. It just says... The passage describing the home fields of Nargothrond is of great interest in itself, for rarely are there references to the agriculture of the peoples of Middle-earth in the elder days.
Well, boom, that's it.
Well, no kidding. There you go.
Rarely, as in apparently just this once, unless you share something else.
Right, exactly, yeah. Unless you got something else, in those boxes, Christopher. So, I mean, this seems to be just about it, really.
Yeah. But that certainly is an implication. Not even an implication. I'm sorry. That's a direct statement that there are, tilled lands maintained as, farmland and pastures for animals and orchards.
Yeah.
So,
definitely some agriculture there. I just think we just don't really know too much about it.
Well, apparently neither does Christopher Tolkien.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I think we've technically answered Ryan's question. It might not be as much detail as he's hoping for, but
Sure.
I just don't think we can say anymore without speculating way beyond any of the texts available.
True, but I think that's intentional on Tolkien's part. We read modern fiction, a lot of us, and as modern readers, we've come to expect a lot of that kind of day-to-day or mundane details about everyday life.
Sure,
it's one way of getting realism. It's in kind of the gritty fantasy or realistic fantasy, like George R.R. Martin, for example, would probably be the biggest name that comes to mind in that style of writing. But Tolkien wasn't a modern writer; he's a medievalist, and you don't get that in Beowulf. You don't get the day-to-day grind.
Right.
You don't get to find out, how they make
what everyday life was like,
or how they knitted that particular fabric together. It's just not the kind of detail,
or how the economy worked or anything like that. You didn't need it because
and
it was
thankfully you don't know anything about
it.
politics, and that's a good thing.
Okay.
That's not the kind of realism that Tolkien wanted, and at least
I agree.
in these writings. And if you listen to our first episode or read on fairy stories, you can probably guess why. He talks about his work being escapist, intentionally so, and it's intended to be kind of mythological in scope and not anthropological. So he was intentionally silent on details about things like the economy and social conditions and the plight of the common peasant. Things that we might find ourselves
things
reading
that we
about
do find a lot in those modern fantasy worlds. Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree.
I mean, we don't get details on any of the day-to-day life of really anybody except for maybe the hobbits. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I don't miss it. I never think to myself, I wonder, how things work in Minas Tirith. Where are the ports? And I mean,
he manages. I agree. I mean, I think he manages to achieve a different kind of realism without it. He achieves that, that secondary belief that he's striving for, because the world is very detailed, just in a different way.
Exactly.
And it's things like the languages, things like the history, things that a lot of that other more, you mentioned the gritty fantasy. A lot of that stuff doesn't have.
That's true.
And I don't think one's better than the other.
No, they're just different.
Yeah. I like both at different times. But I think it's just, this is what Tolkien was going for, as you said.
Yeah. But to answer the question, it does appear that they were not hunter-gatherers, but indeed an agricultural society, even if we don't see it going on.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully that answers Ryan's question, and I can completely understand him asking that question as a modern reader. Hope that helps Ryan. And again, that's in the Lays of Beleriand, Volume 3 of the History of Middle-earth.
Thanks for the question, Ryan. So now it's on with today's discussion. We're going to start at the beginning of the chapter. I'll go ahead and read that first paragraph. It's a recap of the last 3 episodes. My goodness, we spent 6 hours talking about Beren and Luthien. And
Incredible.
Here we are, back again. It is said that Beren and Luthien returned to the northern lands of Middle-earth and dwelt together for a time as living man and woman, and they took up again their mortal form in Doriath. Those that saw them were both glad and fearful, and Luthien went to Menegroth and healed the winter of Thingol with the touch of her hand. But Melian looked in her eyes and read the doom that was written there, and turned away, for she knew that a parting beyond the end of the world had come between them, and no grief of loss has been heavier than the grief of Melian the Maya in that hour. Then Beren and Luthien went forth alone, fearing neither thirst nor hunger, and they passed beyond the river Gelion into Osiriand, and dwelt there in Tol Galen, the Green Isle, in the midst of Adorant, until all tidings of them ceased. The Eldar afterwards called that country Dorfirn y Guinar, the land of the dead that live, and there was born Dior Aranel the Beautiful, who was after known as Dior Eluchil, which is Thingol's heir. No mortal man spoke ever again with Beren, son of Barahir, and none saw Beren or Luthien leave the world, or marked where at last their bodies lay. Wow.
It's a lovely paragraph.
It is.
We were talking about this before we started recording. A little odd that it comes at the beginning of this chapter.
I know, it does. Doesn't it feel like it fits with the last chapter?
Yeah, I kind of wish it would have been
out.
Yeah. But
it
it
does give
does
us a chance to revisit, which is good.
It does, and and in a good way, I think, as we'll see in a minute here. I mean, the story of Beren and Luthien really does catalyze some of the things that are going to happen here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
In an unexpected way. So I guess it's good that he brings it back here. So so mortal man and woman. We talked about this last time that that Luthien she became human. She became a woman, a human woman. So there they are living in their mortal form. So if we remember from the last episode, they were allowed to come back to Middle Earth, but there was no guarantee of any kind of
no
in a certain amount of time or anything. Yeah,
without certitude of life or joy.
Thank you. There you go. So they did it. They took the chance. They came back and they lived out as mortal man and woman, and they had a child.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what it was all about in the beginning. Wasn't
Exactly. It is really all about that. I mean, we'll see how that goes. So, we talk about her being a human woman. I'm not really sure that's. I mean, it says living man and woman, but doesn't she maintain some of her nature? I mean, she's going to be mortal, but
I think she's still got some power.
Otherwise, Dior is still just a man.
Well, that's true.
And I think we know that Dior has some special blood.
Yeah, definitely. She's still got the elf power. She's still got the Maya power.
Right.
I think there's something of that
mortal.
there.
She's just like, I mean, okay, I'm going to draw a bad analogy. In the movies, when Elrond looks upon Arwen and he touches her hand and it's cold.
Oh,
and he knows at that moment that she's
yes, the
doesn't
life
have
of
a
the
fever.
Eldars. Yeah.
The life of the Eldar
is leaving you.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that's what I mean by a bad example. But Melian sees this. She sees in her eyes, in Luthien's eyes, the fact that now there's going to come a death, and it's a death of humans. It's the death of men. It's the death that Arwen will die at the end of her life. She's still elf, but she's no longer an immortal elf.
Right.
And so that's what happens here.
And
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to talk about this incomparable grief. I mean, this...
Yeah.
This... this
grief
is
of loss.
Yeah,
None
I mean, because this is a doom. This is a parting beyond the end of the world, and we've spent quite a lot of time talking about the different fates of elves and men after they die. Elves stay in Arda, and men go beyond.
And the Maya, are also tied to the world, just like the Valar. If you descend into Arda, you're there.
That's right. Yeah, you're there until the end of Arda. So
she knows this is forever.
This is forever. Yeah.
Because even when Arda does end, and let's assume that they're able to somehow go beyond the end of the world, maybe back into the timeless halls or whatever Iluvatar has
or maybe
in
into Arda remade or something. I mean, we don't know about that. Yeah.
But that's certainly not where men go. Where men go is beyond all of this. We have no clue where they go. So it's it's a permanent loss, and that must just be heartbreaking for a mother.
I mean, I do wonder if they would be reunited in Arda remade, because we know that men will enter back into that when it's made perfect, right?
I don't
remember.
I mean, I know that the myth has Turin coming back to finish a particular task, but I don't know if men are. Well, we do know that men are involved after the destruction of the world with sort of the rebuilding with the new music.
Yeah,
that
right.
I'm trying to remember that. Oh yeah, here we go. That a greater still, talking about music, shall be made before Iluvatar by the choirs of the Ainur and the children of Iluvatar after the end of days. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they will be involved.
But still, despite that, I mean, their natures are going to be different at that point. Because she's, Luthien now has the fate of a mortal. So, despite the Maya blood that she and her line have, you got to figure that she's going to be in the choir of men if she's there.
She will.
So it is. I mean, your comment that it's a permanent loss is still true. It is permanent in a way that I don't think our mortal minds can really comprehend.
No, that's true. We are limited with that finite nature. I am glad that she's able to heal the winter of Thingol. That's a pleasant thing. But then they leave and they go off on their own, and they kind of into this self-defined exile in an island in the middle of a river, one of the further south tributaries of Gelion. And I hope I didn't butcher that name, Dorfirn y Guinar.
It sounded right on to me.
Okay, because it's either way, it's an interesting land, the land of the dead that live, also known as the land of the walking dead.
Well, don't need that image.
No, zombie Luthien, not attractive.
No.
Dior's born there. Thingol's
Dior
heir.
the Beautiful.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
And then,
well, sure. I mean, look who his mom is. I mean, the most beautiful of the children of Iluvatar.
Right, but you don't usually hear about a male child described as beautiful, right?
That's true.
Handsome or
maybe when they're a baby.
Yeah, that's true.
A beautiful baby boy. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I heard that of my son.
Yeah.
I'm
sure.
But you're right. It doesn't. It's not an epithet that usually survives into adulthood.
And I think the first time I read this, I wasn't sure what gender Dior was because it doesn't say there was born their son Dior Aranel the Beautiful.
It's true.
It doesn't say him or he. It's just that this person was after known as Dior Elhil, which is also not helpful.
Right. Exactly. And it's such a short word that you can't. You can't find any of the usual suffixes that
exactly.
There's no ways or indils or els. Any of those little markers
the
that
giveaways
tell you
that tell you,
this
is a boy.
Yeah.
And then I love this. We could kind of go full Elvis on the last sentence here and speculate that perhaps they are still alive. Since nobody saw when they left the world or marked where their bodies are. I saw him
shopping at Walmart just the other day.
I was at Target the other day. I saw Baron buying some
peanut butter and bananas.
Wow.
It's vegan.
There you go. No, I was actually at a physician's office. I saw him picking out a new prosthetic. Left prosthetic right hand.
Oh, too soon.
Way too soon. So anyway, if we spend that much time on what's really just the preface to the chapter, we're going to be here all night. So let's move on.
All right.
The Union of Maedhros. We won't read this next paragraph, but we find out that Maedhros figures out, hey, look, this is our only chance. Morgoth's going to get us all one at a time. We got to get this together. But what happens, Shawn?
I love the fact that it's the deeds of Beren and Luthien that makes him realize that he suddenly realizes that Morgoth is not unassailable.
If one elf maiden and one human stud can go and do this, maybe we've got a chance.
Exactly. And that's a reminder of, I think we mentioned this in our first episode on Beren and Luthien, that Tolkien quote about how the unknown and the weak can turn the wheels of the world.
Yes.
It's a bit like, what's the Gandalf quote from Two Towers? The falling of small stones that starts an avalanche.
The avalanche. Mm-hmm. Talking about the Ents at that point, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. So.
But what happened? So he's going to get this party started, and what?
Well, I guess I'll go ahead and read this next paragraph.
Yeah,
why don't I do that?
That was my point.
That was my cue, wasn't it?
I was just trying to give you the nice little easy segue.
Yeah. No easy segues for me.
All right, go ahead, take it on.
Yet the oath of Feanor and the evil deeds that it had wrought did injury to the design of Maedhros, and he had less aid than should have been. Orodreth would not march forth at the word of any son of Feanor because of the deeds of Celegorm and Curufin, and the elves of Nargothrond trusted still to defend their hidden stronghold by secrecy and stealth. Thence came only a small company, following Gwyndor, son of Guilin, a very valiant prince, and against the will of Orodreth he went to the northern war, because he grieved for the loss of Gelmir his brother in the Dagor Bragalach. They took the badge of the house of Fingolfin, and marched beneath the banners of Fingon, and they never came back, save one.
That's not foreboding.
No, not at all.
That's another we can't have nice things.
Right.
Man, stinking Celegorm and Curufin. If
running
they just
it for everybody.
Seriously.
Running it for all of the sons of Feanor, yeah.
Because really, that ends
up
a
good one.
Yeah, Maedhros is the good one, but sure enough, Celegorm and Curufin have to blow it for everyone.
Yep.
Orodreth's not going to march. I can't blame him. Celegorm and Curufin tried to usurp him.
Hello. Right. It was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, and we're kind of pretty far to the south here. Morgoth, who's this Morgoth fella?
Right.
He's not going to do anything to us. We're gonna hide out.
Well, Well, and again, we talked about Orodreth being sort of, just kind
a
of
little wishy-washy.
easy to sway, just kind of like whatever, go with.
Yeah.
Kind of, just kind of, what was the expression used? Like he just kind of like holds up his finger and
sees which way the wind is blowing and
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just kind of like,
this way.
I'm not going to go all the way up there.
I don't know. This is not a good time for me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of cleaning the caves out right now. I'm in a big project. Can you call me back in 6 months?
We got secrecy. It's fine. We got stealth.
Right.
They're not going to find us.
And then Gwyndor says, look, I'm going anyway. And keep an eye on that name. We're going to see Gwyndor more in this chapter, and we'll see Gwyndor again later.
And we'll see more of Gelmir, too.
We will. Well, yeah. And less of him.
We'll see less of him, too.
We'll see more of him than less of him, and ouch, that's just not good. That is too soon. So let's see whether he gets any help from any place else. From Doriath came little help, so no, he didn't get any more. There's your answer. For Maedhros and his brothers, being constrained by their oath, had before sent to Thingol and reminded him with haughty words of their claim, summoning him to yield the Silmaril or become their enemy. Melian counseled him to surrender it, but the words of the sons of Feanor were proud and threatening, and Thingol was filled with anger, thinking of the anguish of Luthien and the blood of Beren, whereby the jewel had been won, despite the malice of our favorite brothers, Celegorm and Curufin. And every day that he looked upon the Silmaril, the more he desired to keep it forever, for such was its power. Therefore he sent back the messengers with scornful words. Maedhros made no answer, for he had now begun to devise the league and union of the elves. But Celegorm and Curufin vowed openly to slay Thingol and destroy his people if they came victorious from war and the jewel were not surrendered of free will. Then Thingol fortified the marches of his realm and went not to war, nor any out of Doriath, save Mablung and Beleg, who were unwilling to have no part in these great deeds. To them Thingol gave leave to go, so long as they served not the sons of Feanor, and they joined themselves to the host of Fingon. Yeah, I know. I was laughing through that one, too. I mean, Celegorm and Curufin.
We're going to slay you and destroy your people as soon as we get done with this battle.
We're just going to wipe you out.
It's just adding to the discord.
Oh, and, by the way.
Yeah, right.
We're going to go win this war. And if we do, we're going to kill you.
We're going to kill you and destroy your people. Yeah, they're just swell guys.
They're just such charming fellows. You just want to give them what they ask for.
Yeah.
I did notice once again that Melian counsels him to do something and he doesn't do it. Once again, he doesn't listen to Melian.
Of course.
I mean, in this case, I really almost can't blame him. I mean, it.
Well, the one thing I do like about this paragraph is his motives. Yeah. Thingol's motives are, he's thinking of the anguish of Luthien and the blood of Beren. I love the fact that he really has warmed to his son-in-law at this point.
Part of me wants to go, it's about flipping time. I mean, part of it's just, now you think of the blood of Beren. Earlier, you were thinking of how that might look good on your walls.
Right. But then as soon as that happens, we're reminded that, no, it really is all about the Silmaril, too.
It is. Boy, doesn't that kind of echo the Ring right there? He looked upon it, and the more he desired to keep it forever, for such was its power.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, there's such a parallel there.
That's one of those recurring themes we see, all over the Legendarium. Sort of this lust for these material things that, are beautiful and are powerful.
Objects of great power, but my goodness.
From Mablung and Beleg, good on him.
Well, Beleg Guthalion, he must go. Yes, he's there's no surprise there. But unlike Gwyndor, who goes against the will of Orodreth, Thingol does give them leave. He just tells them that you can't fight.
That's true. He does.
For Maedhros.
That's true.
So, I get that. My goodness. So then we get, and again, we're going to skip a couple paragraphs here, but Maedhros gets the help of the dwarves of the Naugrim.
Yeah.
They get a whole bunch of weapons going. He gets the help of men, Bor and Ulfang, and they bring in more of their kinsfolk from the east.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You get Fingon gets helped by the House of Hador. And the people of Haleth.
And we talked about the House of Hador. Remember, we've talked before about how the House of Hador they're the mighty ones, right? They're the toughest of men.
Yeah,
and the Fingon's house are, the most valiant. We've talked about how this alliance is, this is like the elite warrior alliance of.
Yeah, these are the special forces of.
Yeah, right, exactly.
At least they will be for a little while longer. Yeah, too soon.
For about 8 more pages.
The people of Haleth, they whetted their axes as well. I love that phrase. They whetted their axes. Cool. And then, so Haldir, his son, rules them. And then, of course, Turgon gets the news, but we don't know anything yet what's going to happen there. Right. Maedhros, apparently, word got out. And, they started doing some things. They did drive out the orcs from the north parts of Beleriand. But by doing that, it triggered Morgoth. Morgoth became aware of what was going on. And I love this. He took counsel against them. So he sent spies among them. Faithless men were already deep in the secrets of Maedhros and his brothers.
Yeah.
We've
talked a couple of chapters ago about who some of those were. And I won't spoil it because we'll see it very soon.
Well, I think we did talk about.
We know who it is.
Yeah.
It's Ulfang's people. Yeah.
So let's see. Then we get a little bit of the plan. We get a little battle plan drawn up here. He decides that he's going to do kind of this pincher move. We're going to assault Angband from both the east and the west. He's going to, in theory, march over openly on the field of Anfauglith with banners drawn or banners displayed, and he's going to draw out the army. So the armies of Morgoth are going to come out, and then Fingon's going to come from the west, and it's this whole hammer and anvil idea. They're going to put them in the middle and smash them to bits.
Right.
We'll see how well that works out for them. So we'll actually have you start, maybe have you read the On the Appointed Day paragraph. That might be a good one to start with there.
All right. On the appointed day, on the morning of midsummer, the trumpets of the Eldar greeted the rising of the sun, and in the east was raised the standard of the sons of Feanor, and in the west the standard of Fingon, High King of the Noldor. Then Fingon looked out from the walls of Aethel Sirion, and his host was arrayed in the valleys and the woods upon the east of Eredwethrin, well hid from the eyes of the enemy, but he knew that it was very great. For there all the Noldor of Hithlum were assembled, together with elves of the Falas and Gwendor's company from Nargothrond, and he had great strength of men. Upon the right were the host of Dorloman, and all the valor of Hurin and Huor his brother. And to them had come Haldir of Brethil with many men of the woods.
Right on. So we're gathering the troops. I noticed that when we looked at the last battle, it was in the middle of winter on a new moon. And so it was pitch black when the Dagger of Bragalach began.
And this is the exact opposite.
And this is the exact opposite.
The rising of the sun.
Rising of the sun. I love it.
Yeah.
Again, not a coincidence here that this is when the good guys attack.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you think about the way this is drawn up. I probably should have pulled up Loader Project to kind of draw this together in terms of where the armies are. But I think, we're familiar enough with the geography now to kind of get a picture here. So Fingon's host is in this north-south range of mountains, the Aethel Sirion. Or I'm sorry, the Eredwethrin. Yeah. He's in the fortress of Aethel Sirion, which is in the Eredwethrin. But they're all hidden.
Right.
And then you've got, so on his right you've got the men there, so they're slightly further to the south, and over on the far east you've got
Maedhros and his Easterlings that he's got,
right, and the Naugrim, well. Right,
so and the Naugrim, right,
the dwarves, and then Bor and Ulfang.
Yeah.
So we get the black smoke going up, which means no pope was chosen. I'm sorry, which means that Morgoth. That literally just hit me, and I was too inspired.
Great, perfect.
Oh, we got white smoke.
Let's go with it.
So the wrath of Morgoth is aroused.
Morgoth was aroused.
Oh man, I'm gonna get in trouble for that one. So Fingon's, a little nervous.
Doubt fell upon Fingon's heart.
I love that phrase.
I have to think he's remembering what happened to dear old dad.
Yeah. I'm thinking that's part of it. And he's looking. And
he's also looking to see if he can see Maedhros's hosts.
Seeing if he might see with elven sight. Legolas, what do your elf eyes see?
What do your elf eyes see?
Well, I see the
Don't see Maedhros. Where is he?
Where's that Maedhros fellow? Of course, he doesn't know because their radios are down. That Maedhros was hindered by Uldor. But I'm going to go ahead and take that next paragraph. And again, I know that our style tonight's a little different because this is such a narrative-heavy chapter. There's not as much to talk about, so we're kind of just it's almost like play-by-play, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is like the Super Bowl, except without the massive choking. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Apologies to any of our listeners from Atlanta, I suppose.
That's much more, and that's a much more current reference as of when we're recording this than by the time it gets released.
That's true. By the time that'll be all played out. By
The Super Bowl was 2 days ago. And
oh my goodness!
As a New Orleans Saints fan, I'm always happy to see the Falcons lose.
Well, as an Oakland Raiders fan, I'm always sad to see the Patriots win. 2002, that was a fumble, man, I'm telling you. All right. But now a cry went up, passing up the wind from the south, from vale to vale, and elves and men lifted their voices in wonder and joy. For unsummoned and unlooked for, Turgon had opened the leaguer of Gondolin, and was come with an army 10,000 strong, with bright mail and long swords and spears like a forest. Then when Fingon heard afar the great trumpet of Turgon his brother, the shadow passed, and his heart was uplifted, and he shouted aloud, Utulian aure, aya eldalie aratanatari Utulian aure. The day has come. Behold, people of the Eldar and fathers of men, the day has come. And all those who heard his great voice echo in the hills answered, crying, Auta ilome, the night is passing. I love that.
That's very well done.
That's
kudos
so
to you.
Oh, thank you.
That's a mouthful of Quenya, and you just
well,
to my ears, you nailed it. I'm impressed.
Well, I will concede one thing. I actually did practice that a little bit because I did not want to butcher that. It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful. It
is. And I knew if I came in cold. It's as beautiful
to look at as it is to hear,
isn't it?
Actually,
I love it. Yeah. There's something about just even the shape of the letters and where the stresses are and
you really get a sense of the music of Quenya from this.
You really do.
This is one of my favorite passages, and I got a word nerd out on it a little bit. I mean, it's.
Oh, please do. That's why I pay you. Wait, I do pay you, right? Did you get the check?
You pay me?
It's in the mail.
Yeah, right. It's all for the love.
There you go. I'll give you 10 times what you're getting now.
Thank you. Finally, it's about time. Now, I mean, as much as I love learning about, Quenya and Sindarin roots, I've never really bothered to sit down and actually learn the languages. Well, I know some people do. Hats off to you. I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
But I think if I wanted to, I think this is the passage I would look at first. And there's the passage later, which that Hurin speaks later, that's got some of these same words. I don't know. I love this because you really, well, first of all, he gives you the Quenya and then he gives you the English translation.
Yeah.
That's
very helpful.
Very helpful.
You can pick some of that out. I mean, we know the Atani. So Atanatari kind of gives you a clue. Yeah. Eldalie, we already know.
I mean, if you remember Frodo's incantation or invocation in Two Towers, the Ayad Endil, Elenion and Kalima, that's hail or behold.
Or behold. It's, verily.
So, right, forsooth. But this Utulian Aure is just,
isn't that beautiful?
If you look at that compared with what Hurin says later on, you can really see that you can see this verb root or verb stem of tool in there.
The same stem.
Yeah, the same stem. And I'm not going to take the time to parse out all the different prefixes and suffixes. I mean, I've done it, but I'm not going to talk about it here because it would take us all day. But yeah, I know. But this is the perfect tense verb.
Okay.
Now I'll stop there. But
perfect tense verb. Okay.
Yeah, the perfect tense of the verb. The day has come. But no, I mean you'll see it later on. You can just really see how the different parts go together, the different prefixes and suffixes go together, attached to this root or this verb stem tool, which means come. Right. And again, if you compare that with aure and tuluva later on, which is the future tense of the same verb.
Yeah.
You just, I don't know, you start to get a sense for how the verbs work. And
You do.
I just love it. There's actually, I did a little research just because I don't know the language and I don't really know how to conjugate Quenya verbs.
Oh, goodness.
But there's no.
We've
but
just
there's
lost about 70 people. Click. Looks
No,
like next
it's
episode they're going to conjugate verbs.
No, we're not. But there's an excellent site called Artalambion, which has done, I think, probably the best overview of Tolkien's languages on the web. I'll put a link up on the site, but there's just a lot of great information there, like kind of shows like just, how the different verbs work, how the nouns work. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, as I am, but I just don't have the time to sink into it because I got 2 kids.
And a podcast.
2 kids and a podcast. But I'll put a link up on the site. It's a fascinating, just the way the verbs come together and everything. And I'll just leave that up there for folks. Cool
Sounds
stuff.
like a good idea. I have to say, because I listen to the film score, so often, the Howard Shore complete recordings, that includes the very bit at the end of Return of the King when Aragorn sings.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why I recognize that word, Utulien, because he sings that.
I have come. Yeah.
Et erelo endorena Utulien.
Yeah.
Which is out of the great sea to Middle Earth.
To Middle Earth, I am come.
I am come, Utulien. Yeah, it's just, I love it. So cool. So much good stuff. Well, now that might be the high peak of the chapter.
It's all downhill from there. It's
all down. That's right. This is.
But you know what? I want to say, throughout as all the horrible stuff that's going to happen in this chapter, there is this little thread, and there's a lot. There's this little thread of hope that runs throughout, and this is the first bit of it.
Yes.
As Fingon is hearing his brother, and he gets that little shred of hope, and the day has come. We're gonna do this, guys.
Yep. The day has come. The night is passing.
The night is passing. Yeah. So that's just the first little moment of hope, and there's just little thread throughout. I'll point out a few places where we see it.
Please do, because this is a rather
we need it
difficult chapter. Yeah. I mean, this is a chapter where if you're a man or an elf, it is easy to fall into despair. To take that hopelessness, to go back to an essay that I did a few weeks ago on our ponderings, to go from hope through hopelessness to despair instead of hanging on to hope, even in the light of absolutely incredibly bad odds. But yeah, you're right. There is just a thread of hope, and it's worth hanging on to. So
and I find that it is men in this chapter who constantly remind the elves of the hope that's there. The hope that's there to be had.
In one case, quite very explicitly. So we'll get to that.
Yes.
So here we get into the kind of the early battle. So Morgoth begins his assault towards Fingon. The Noldor get a little impatient. They want to get out there and get to the fight. But Hurin, the wise man, speaks against it and says, "You got to beware of Morgoth."
Yeah. And this is an interesting little shift. This is a man giving counsel to elves.
Giving counsel to the elves. I love it. And he's not afraid to speak up and say, no, guys, that's not your best bet right now. You please remember who Morgoth is. He always is trying to trick you. And his strength is always greater than it seems. So they sit back and
that's
wait.
a really good point, because that reminds me of what happens to Hurin later on.
I know. Boy,
and this is advice that I think Hurin is going to need for himself later on.
Yes, it will.
It's really interesting.
He says, look.
Did you notice this bit about the dun raiment?
The dun raiment, the dull, not shiny.
It's basically desert camo.
Yeah, it really is. You're right. That's a good point. And dun raiment is desert camo indeed.
Yeah.
So that way they can't be seen for a long time.
Right.
It actually, that ends up being the thing that I think keeps the Noldor there. Obviously, if they'd seen them further out, they might have been even more impatient.
I think you're right.
But Hurin's advice is very sound. Look, we're in a really great defensive position. There is no reason to go out there and fight on the plains where it's a relatively even fight. We're in great
let's
defensive
stay here
positions.
in the hills.
Let them break themselves.
Yep.
And they're going to be out of formation, trying to come up the hills. But Morgoth has another purpose. Tell us the happy story. Tell me about Gelmir, Daddy.
Well, son, don't tell Mom I told you this story. But the captain of Morgoth in the west had been commanded to draw out Fingon swiftly from his hills by whatever means he could. He marched on, therefore, until the front of his battle was drawn up before the stream of Sirion, from the walls of the fortress of Aethel-Sirion to the inflowing of Rivil at the fen of Serech. And the outposts of Fingon could see the eyes of their enemies. But there was no answer to his challenge, and the taunts of the orcs faltered as they looked upon the silent walls and the hidden threat of the hills. Then the captain of Morgoth sent out riders with tokens of parley, and they rode up before the outworks of the Barat Aethel. With them they brought Gelmir, son of Guilin, that lord of Nargothrond, whom they had captured in the Bragalach, and they had blinded him. Then the heralds of Angband showed him forth, crying, "We have many more such at home, but you must make haste if you would find them, for we shall deal with them all when we return even so." And they hewed off Gelmir's hands and feet, and his head last, within sight of the elves, and left him.
Oh, man.
Ugh.
It's the psychological warfare, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you think back to Sauron and the heads over the walls of Minas Tirith.
That's exactly what I was thinking, is the heads of people, rolling in as from the catapults. Just terrible.
Oh, it's gruesome. I mean, it's just... It's barbaric. I mean, they had already blinded the poor guy.
Yeah. It is. It's total barbarism.
Absolutely.
And it's intended to do, what it exactly does.
Exactly what it does. It's such just a. I mean, they come out to parlay. This is. There's a code, I think, in warfare. Certainly in medieval warfare. You parlay and you don't do stuff like this.
No, you don't.
This is a horrific act of violence.
Yeah.
And as much as I hate to beat up on the movies, this scene, reading it again, reminded me of. Do you remember the scene in Return of the King where the mouth of Sauron comes out? And
in the extended edition, I think. Right?
It's in the extended edition. You're right.
The mouth didn't make the theatrical version.
That's right. You're right. He did not. I hardly ever watch the theatritional anymore. I probably should.
No, I only see them when they're on TNT. With like 8 million commercials.
Right, exactly. But there's Aragorn actually, the mouth of Sauron is, kind of talking smack like he does.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And Aragorn actually
you had all
cuts
those
his
teeth,
head
you
off.
Talk smack too. Yeah, I know.
All he does is talk. Yeah, and Aragorn cuts his head off. It's just I don't know. I mean, I can't lie. I thought it was cool the first time I saw
it.
I
cheered.
It's like, you cheer, but you think about it, and that really isn't something that Aragorn would do. That's something that orcs do, and
exactly.
I think that the power of this scene is in the utter barbarism of the act of killing a hostage, maiming and killing a hostage in this way. When you're supposed to be supposedly negotiating.
Exactly. You send out parlay and then it's nope, we're just gonna lop thump, thump, and then
and we're basically just they're doing it to get a rise out of the Noldor.
Oh yeah.
And as you said, it works. It does exactly what they wanted it to do.
Which we'll get to now. By ill chance, at that place in the outwork stood Gwyndor of Nargothrond, the brother of Gelmir. Now his wrath was kindled to madness, and he leapt forth on horseback, and many riders with him. And they pursued the heralds and slew them, and drove on deep into the main host. And seeing this, all the host of the Noldor was set on fire, and Fingon put on his white helm and sounded his trumpets, and all the host of Hithlum leapt forth from the hills in sudden onslaught. The light of the drawing of the swords of the Noldor was like a fire in a field of reeds, and so fell and swift was their onset that almost the designs of Morgoth went astray. Before the army that he sent westward could be strengthened, it was swept away, and the banners of Fingon passed over Anfauglith and were raised before the walls of Angband. Ever in the forefront of that battle went Gwyndor and the Elves of Nargothrond, and even now they could not be restrained. And they burst through the gate and slew the guards upon the very stairs of Angband, and Morgoth trembled upon his deep throne, hearing them beat upon his doors. But they were trapped there, and all were slain, save Gwyndor only, whom they took alive. For Fingon could not come to their aid. By many secret doors in Thangorodrim, Morgoth had let issue forth his main host that he held in waiting, and Fingon was beaten back, with great loss from the walls.
And Admiral Akbar was up on the hills shouting, "It's a trap!"
Trap!
Oh man,
Well
it's sad. Thank you. It's
is.
just sad.
It is sad. I mean,
They fall. I mean, they just fall for it. And
what a
and
dramatic
they do exactly.
moment, though. I mean, all of them draw their
absolutely.
swords, and you're just like, oh.
I do love the fire in a field of reeds.
They're
It's
gonna
such a great
do
image.
this. I mean, they just wipe out the army, but you've got to remember where you are, and getting yourself in the kind of the courtyard there at the entryway of Angband. You're in a choke point, and just a very, very bad thing.
And it's his it's his home field. It's Morgoth's. Morgoth's been
he knows
laying
what's going on.
Yeah, he knows where everything is. He knows where to hide. He's been thinking about this for centuries. Where to hide his troops when this happens. So it's an
inevitable thing when you get that close to the gates of Angband. I do love though that we once again see him fearful. Morgoth trembled upon his deep throne.
Oh, that's
just
a good
another
point.
reminder of this guy is afraid.
He's a coward. Yeah,
he is totally.
Hearing them beat upon his doors. Yeah, hearing them beat upon his doors. He's trembling.
And they were all slain except for Gwyndor. So remember that, because we are going to see Gwyndor again, though not in this chapter.
Correct.
But boy, he's a tremendous character. And remember his heroism, remember his bravery, because those are things that speak to his character that I think in the next chapter, will become important.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, because he's not quite the elf he once was.
No,
obviously, he's going to be in captivity in Angband for some time here.
Yeah,
a few years, and he's going to be a shadow of what he was before. But yeah, if you remember this heroism and this love that he had for his brother, and this maybe also a little bit of foolishness. He falls for this trap. Really.
He learns that lesson though, as we'll see.
He does learn that lesson, and that's
he's
kind of what I
a
was
much
going to get to.
wiser character. Yeah,
he comes out of it much wiser, and I think he presents an interesting foil for Turin, who is his main, his little counterpart.
Yeah, I love that section of the story. I can't wait till we get to that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I also noticed the beginning of that passage, by ill chance. Of course, that wasn't chance. I mean, even the bad things in this circumstance, you can't say weren't part of the plan. I mean, you don't want it to be part of the plan, but we've kind of come to the conclusion that there really isn't chance in that sense, right?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
The Noldor are going to get wiped out. We know that. It has to happen.
Yeah.
That's part of
this
the
is all
prophecy
meant
of
to
the
happen.
North. This is all.
The Noldor are not going to win this battle with strength of arms. We already know that.
They cannot. I mean, it's
Ulmo has told Torgon that, Mandas and Ulmo, I think, have said that in a few different places. It's their hope is going to come from elsewhere.
Yeah, and Maedhros, when he's forming the Union of Maedhros, doesn't think about that. Not that it would have mattered much at that point, but like we've said before, you got to do what you got to do, even if it's relatively hopeless.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still. I don't think it was chance. I think they were supposed to come out, and they were supposed to make Morgoth afraid, and Gwyndor was supposed to be captured. There's all those things that come into play. But,
yeah. Because everything is going to set up. It's. We're going to see how intertwined all these events are in the next few chapters.
But he's still responsible for what he did. I mean, the chance that he was there, I don't know. No, he still did what he did. So we get this really cool interplay, and we'll see it so much more in the next chapter between fate and free will. Yes, definitely between
fate and free will.
So now we get the actual Nirnaeth Arnoediad. It is named that because no song or tale can contain all its grief. We get a real brief summary. We're not going to read all of this, but we're just going to skim through what happens. Fingon retreats. Let's see.
Haldir slain. So that's the Lord of the Haladin.
Most of the other men of Brethil.
And most of the men of Brethil, yeah.
Yeah. The orcs surround the host of Hithlum, so this would be Fingon's army. They fought until the morning, and then you hear
and in
Turgon,
the morning came hope.
Estel, when the horns of Turgon were heard. So they come to the rescue, and what happens with that?
And we knew that, and remember, Fingon had heard Turgon's horns
Oh, yeah.
before, but Turgon hadn't actually really joined the fray because he was still guarding the southern pass.
And Turgon restrained most of his people, it says. Yeah, he he had a he knew better.
Yeah, right, exactly. They were stationed guarding that pass of Sirion, and the rash onslaught. He restrained them from the rash onslaught. So now they're coming to the aid of Fingon, and here's what happens next. Now the phalanx of the guard of the king broke through the ranks of the orcs, and Turgon hewed his way to the side of his brother. And it is told that the meeting of Turgon with Hurin, who stood beside Fingon, was glad in the midst of battle. Then hope was renewed in the hearts of the elves.
Hope, just pointing that
out.
out.
There it is again, yep. And in that very time, at the third hour of morning, the trumpets of Maedhros were heard at last coming up from the east, and the banners of the sons of Feanor assailed the enemy in the rear. Some have said that even then the Eldar might have won the day had all their hosts proved faithful. For the orcs wavered, and their onslaught was stayed, and already some were turning to flight. But even as the vanguard of Maedhros came upon the orcs, Morgoth loosed his last strength, and Angband was emptied. There came wolves, and wolf riders, and there came Balrogs, and dragons, and Glaurung, father of dragons. The strength and terror of the great worm were now great indeed, and elves and men withered before him. And he came between the hosts of Maedhros and Fingon, and swept them apart.
My goodness, what a moment.
Mm-hmm.
This is a back and forth battle. Every moment you think the elves are going to gain the upper hand, then there's something else that comes.
Right.
And then they get the upper hand again, and then something else happens.
And then something else comes. Yeah. Morgoth has always got these reserves just waiting to come in.
Massive numbers. Massive
and in
numbers.
this last strength is, there's stuff that he has. There's stuff that elves and men have never seen before here. Maybe not too much. Maybe wolf riders. I don't think we've seen wolf riders before.
No, and now how do we fit those in with the wolves, the wargs?
Yeah, I don't know.
Werewolves. No, wolf riders. Of course,
I guess they're just orcs or men riding wolves. I guess, or wargs.
Well, yeah.
And they've seen Glaurung before, but they've not seen Glaurung
at his full strength. And I don't think they saw him with other dragons. And the numbers are vast.
That's a good point. Yeah.
This final version doesn't tell us the numbers, but if we look in the later Annals of Beleriand, which is in the Lost Road, that's volume 5 of the History of Middle-earth, we learn a little bit more about the numbers. Now, again, the numbers aren't here, so maybe those weren't the numbers. Maybe he didn't settle on these. But this is at least what he imagined at one point. And you can hear some of the phrasing is the same, so it's pretty close. Morgoth sent forth now all the dwellers in Angband, and hell was emptied. There came 100,000 orcs and 1,000 Balrogs, and in the van was Glomund, which was Glaurung's name, Glomund the dragon, and elves and men withered before him. So, we even get that last line, and elves and men withered before him is an exact quote, and we get the fact that it's orcs and Balrogs and dragons.
Right.
But it's 100,000 orcs and 1,000 Balrogs. 1,000 Balrogs?
Wow.
Whoa.
Well, that reminds me of, when we talked about the ruin of Beleriand, and we talked about just the valor of men and elves of the first age to stand up to the armies that they stood up to.
1,000 Balrogs.
To have, even to be defeated, but to have this back and forth against 1,000 Balrogs, a foe too fearsome for 8 guys and a Maya to deal with in the Third Age. Wow.
Yeah, wow is about right. Unbelievable. But even that, like the text says, they might have been able to win the day if their hosts had been faithful. So I'm gonna get to that. Yet neither by wolf, nor by Balrog, nor by dragon would Morgoth have achieved his end, but for the treachery of men. In this hour the plots of Ulfang were revealed. Many of the Easterlings turned and fled, their hearts being filled with lies and fear. But the sons of Ulfang went over suddenly to Morgoth, and drove in upon the rear of the sons of Feanor. And in the confusion that they wrought, they came near to the standard of Maedhros. They reaped not the reward that Morgoth promised them, for Maglor slew Uldor the Accursed, the leader in treason, and the sons of Bor slew Ulfast and Ulwarth, ere they themselves were slain. But new strength of evil men came up, that Uldor had summoned and kept hidden in the eastern hills, and the host of Maedhros was assailed now on 3 sides, and it broke and was scattered, and fled this way and that.
Man.
Yeah, scattering an army. I mean, you have to remember how these armies would have fought. These days, obviously, we fight wars differently. But, you would have had armies in formation,
Right. Yeah.
Groups of spear-equipped elves, groups of sword and shield-equipped elves, groups of maybe riders on horses.
Arranged in a certain order,
exactly,
to protect one another in a very specific way,
with a particular facing, because you're facing the enemy and you're oriented towards them. So now when you're assailed on 3 sides, your morale's gone. Everybody's scared. Everybody realizes they're going to die, and they break and they run. Even elves, even these brave Noldoran elves, their army is broken. The sons of Feanor survive. We're not going to read a little bit the next.
Well, and somehow it's just. I think the worst thing about this is the treason aspect.
Yeah,
I mean, if it was orcs, or if it was even men that were openly marching, with Morgoth's armies, it wouldn't be nearly as bad as the fact that it's these sons of Ulfang. You know,
and it's not just that they leave. I mean, sure, some of them just turn and leave, but the ones that actually drive in upon the rear, fighting in your own ranks. Totally unexpected. Just evil.
Again, I mean, we see Morgoth's forces just really disrespecting, any laws or
the rules of warfare.
Battle, the rules of warfare. Yeah. It's just it's an utter contempt for sort of the moral compass of this world.
It's an at all costs thing. I mean, this is the ends justify the means. He doesn't care.
Right.
Hideous thing to see this sort of treason, this total betrayal.
Yeah.
And you can't really end up blaming. We'll see later on that the hearts of elves are estranged from men. I can't blame them, really.
After seeing what what men are capable of.
So we move on. The sons of Feanor do survive. And then we get a little piece on the Naugrim. This is a really cool little section, isn't it?
Yeah, I do love this section. So I'll go ahead and start reading from the second sentence of the next paragraph.
Yeah.
For the Naugrim withstood fire more heartily than either elves or men, and it was their custom, moreover, to wear great masks in battle, hideous to look upon, and those stood them in good stead against the dragons. And but for them, Glaurung and his brood would have withered all that was left of the Noldor. There's that withered again. I love that word.
Isn't that a great word?
Yeah. But the Naugrim made a circle about him when he assailed them, and even his mighty armor was not full-proof against the blows of their great axes. And when in his rage Glaurung turned and struck down Azaghal, lord of Belegost, and crawled over him, with his last stroke Azaghal drove a knife into his belly, and so wounded him that he fled the field, and the beasts of Angband in dismay followed after him. Then the dwarves raised up the body of Azaghal and bore it away, and with slow steps they walked behind, singing a dirge in deep voices, as it were a funeral pomp in their country, and gave no heed more to their foes, and none dared to stay them.
Wow, is that a scene or what?
Isn't that a scene?
They pick up their king and they leave.
They just carry him off, and nobody bothers them.
No.
Wow.
I'm not messing with them. Guys, shh, don't say anything.
Yeah, and this dirge in deep voices you could just hear.
No.
There's an alien quality to that. It's kind of creepy, but in a very cool way.
Yeah, that's exactly what. Definitely in a cool way. But they withstood fire more heartily. Is that maybe in their armor, or is that in their physical makeup somehow? I mean, they're very hairy, so one would think it's got to be in their armor.
I think of it as being their makeup. I mean, certainly we see they've got these big masks, and I think those masks helped.
Yeah. Fire resistance +2, charisma -2.
Right. Yeah. You're hideous. Take that thing off. But
We're in town. We've got to trade with merchants. Take your mask off.
That's great. That's awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. But no, I think that there is something to them. I mean, remember they're made by the Smith Vala.
Yep.
They're natural smiths. They probably are used to working around fire.
That's true.
So, maybe there's something to that. I think there's something in their nature.
Yeah, thick skin. Just a toughness about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hairiness. I mean, hairiness too. Why not?
That would be a weakness when it comes to fire, because then you get
you lean over.
Singed.
Yeah, you lean over an open forge with a beard hanging down. It's not.
I lost my eyebrows again tonight. Dang it! That's the third time this year.
Well, honey, I told you to shave.
I told you the same.
Well done. Well done.
Oh, goodness. Good stuff. Wow. The Naugriman battle. I'm so glad he included that paragraph, that to give us a taste of all the races in this battle. All the races with something,
everybody's
skin
doing
in the
their
game,
part.
so to speak.
Yeah.
We've used that phrase. And they were the
stronger
last to
together.
stand firm.
They're always stronger together.
That's true. We've talked about that too. You're right. The different forces, different people, different, whatever it may be, there's always a strength in that diversity of force in this case.
And yet there's just something so strange, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just strange
alien,
as in,
I think was a
alien.
great way to put it. Yeah.
There's something very different about this behavior, the way they treat their fallen chieftain.
Yeah.
I like that. It kind of shows that the dwarves are still a people apart.
Yeah, they are.
Certainly when you compare them to, certainly like the third age dwarves, which are the best the ones we know best, where they're very, westernized.
Yeah, you're right. Westernized. I like that. Yeah, they are. You're right. This is still, kind of in their early phase,
Mm-hmm. They have their own. They still have very much their own tradition, very much their own culture, and it's very much apart.
Well, they keep that well into the. We still see that, but
that's true. But they do a good job of assimilating, I think, later on.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, this is definitely. It doesn't matter if none of you would leave the battlefield right now.
Right.
We are.
That's what we do. That's what we do when our king falls battle. Yeah.
You all go on fighting without us. That's fine. Just get out of our way.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't think I'd want to stay them. I mean, that's
the presence they must have had on that battlefield for even the bad guys to say, "Oh, let's just let them leave. It's fine."
Well, they did kind of force Glaurung and the rest of the beasts to head back, so maybe they were like, "Let's not mess around."
Exactly. Yeah.
We've pretty much done our job. They're leaving, really, and so
True.
For all intents and purposes, they're we're victorious over them.
That's true.
So now we move back to the west side of the battle, because this has happened on the east, and now we go back, ping-ponging back over to the other side. So this would be over with Fingon's people and Turgon's. But now in the western battle, oh man, I hate this part. This is so sad. Do I have to read this? I have to read this.
I had to read Gelmir, so... Oh.
But now in the western battle, Fingon and Turgon were assailed by a tide of foes thrice greater than all the force that was left to them. Gothmog, lord of Balrogs, high captain of Angband, was come, and he drove a dark wedge between the elven hosts, surrounding King Fingon, and thrusting Turgon and Húrin aside towards the fen of Serek. Then he turned upon Fingon. That was a grim meeting. At last Fingon stood alone with his guard dead about him, and he fought with Gothmog, until another Balrog came behind and cast a thong of fire about him. Then Gothmog hewed him with his black axe, and a white flame sprang up from the helm of Fingon as it was cloven. Thus fell the high king of the Noldor, and they beat him into the dust with their maces. And his banner, blue and silver, they trod into the mire of his blood. Oh, man.
Once again, just the utter brutality of Morgoth's forces.
And the cheating. The other Balrog comes behind and casts the thong of fire about him. I mean, okay, Fingon probably wasn't going to be able to survive the battle with Gothmog, but this is, the wrapping your arms around the guy and keeping his arms behind his back so that your buddy can punch him in the gut. It's cheating. It's totally dishonorable battle.
Yeah.
And the vision of contrast here, the black axe and the white flame.
Yeah.
Man, that's power.
Oh, it is. And this white flame, that's one of my favorite and least favorite images in the entire book. I mean,
it really is both.
This is his Fea violently leaving his body.
Absolutely.
Wow. I mean, we've never seen anything like this.
No.
I mean, Feanor, I guess, is the closest thing that comes to mind, where his spirit, fled his body so fast that his body just turns to ash. There, we kind of were happy. But
don't tell the Feanor fans. We don't bring that back up.
But this is Fingon. This is Fingon the Valiant, and just this death is just brutal, and the violence, the violence that's done to his body, and the violence with which his Fea leaves his body are just heart wrenching.
It really is.
And Fingon's not even like. I'm a Turgon fan. I'm a Turgon fan. Yeah. I mean, Fingon's great, but he's not one of the characters that I really connect with.
No, you're right. Turgon, Finrod,
right?
Those are probably the two that for me. But Fingon.
So it's like we talked about Finrod's death. That's heartbreaking because you feel like that character. This isn't even a character that well, but still, this death is heartbreaking because of just the violence of it. It's
the violence and the symbolism. This is the High King.
That's true.
And the fact that they beat his body,
beating his body, trotting his banner into the into the mire of his blood, and you got this contrast of the blue and silver of his banner against the red and the brown of the mud and his blood. Oh,
just awful.
And contrast this with the peace with which Beren and Luthien's spirits left in the last chapter. And I know it's a very different scene. I would expect it to be different, but it's striking to me because we just read how peacefully they both died of wounds. Beren of wounds.
That's true.
But you contrast that with how peaceful death can be, and this is
just how incredibly violent it can be.
How incredibly violent it can be. It's it's ugly.
It really is. And that
but
pretty
again,
much that
hope is on.
Yeah, hope is. And I was going to say
hope is on the way. Yeah.
Exactly. That takes us to kind of the end of the battle, but also the beginning of some hope. The next few paragraphs are yours.
Yep. All right. The field was lost, but still Hurin and Huor and the remnant of the house of Haldor.
That's a typo. There is no house of. I know. I noticed that too in my copy. There's a typo, folks. It's the house of Hador.
I was looking at that. That's not Haldor, is it? Let me start that over. The field was lost, but still Hurin and Huor and the remnant of the house of Hador stood firm with Turgon of Gondolin, and the hosts of Morgoth could not yet win the pass of Sirion. Then Hurin spoke to Turgon, saying, "Go now, Lord, while time is, for in you lives the last hope of the Eldar, and while Gondolin stands, Morgoth shall still know fear in his heart." But Turgon answered, "Not long now can Gondolin be hidden, and being discovered it must fall." Then Huor spoke and said, "Yet if it stands but a little while, then out of your house shall come the hope of elves and men. This I say to you, Lord, with the eyes of death, though we part here forever, and I shall not look on your white walls again, from you and from me a new star shall arise. Farewell." And Maiglin, Turgon's sister's son, who stood by, heard these words, and did not forget them, but he said nothing.
Well, he pretty much never says anything.
It's kind of his thing.
When his father says, "Come with me, son, we're leaving this town," he answered nothing.
Just nothing.
When his father was about to be cast over the cliff, he said nothing.
Yeah.
I think he even said nothing after his mother died.
After his mother died, yeah. He said nothing.
He's quiet.
He's always watching, he's always taking things in, but he never says anything.
He's a quiet, scheming little rat.
Mm-hmm.
But my goodness, the stuff before that is what really matters. That line from Huor, that is such an important line.
It is.
If it stands but a little while, out of your house shall come the hope of elves and men.
Mm-hmm.
There's the hope again.
There's the hope.
Hurin mentions it too, that in you lives the last hope of the Eldar.
Yep.
I love that. I love that hope is central to this.
Yeah. And it has to be because it's such a brutal scene.
Yeah.
It's such a brutal chapter.
Well, because now is hopeless. We have to look to the future for hope now.
Yeah. Right. That's true. That is true. And what we're going to see with Hurin in a moment, I think is, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah,
we will.
I do love this. I love Huor's speaking with the eyes of death. I feel like we've talked about
this
before,
that a number of times, don't we?
Yeah, I can't remember where it's come up most recently. But
it came up with Feanor, and then it came up.
Okay.
I can't remember where it came up more recently, because Feanor was the first one where he talked about seeing with the eyes of death that sons, nobody was going to be able to overcome Thangorodrim, and he still told his sons to go do it anyway because he's such a nice guy. But yeah, I can't remember the other example. I'm wishing I could, but.
Yeah, but it's just this idea that, before they die, they're able
there's
to
some sort of clarity. Yeah,
there's some sort of clarity, maybe almost a clairvoyance. They can just kind of see what's going to happen.
Prophecy of some sort of an understanding of the big picture.
Yeah,
in a way that when we're still living our lives, we just can't get our arms around. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And as we will see, I mean, Huor's words do come absolutely true.
Yes, they do. I mean, this truly, the new star shall arise is the whole point of this book.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Trying not to spoil it, but
pretty much. Yeah, exactly.
So what do we see? Turgon listens, thankfully, and he gathers his people and he retreats. His captains guard the flanks so that they can't get past. But Hurin and Huor and the men of Dor-lómin hold the rear guard. They knew this was a suicide mission, holding a rear guard. They didn't want to leave the north, and if they can't get back to their houses, they can't get back to their families, they're going to stand there until the end. And that this last stand is the most renowned. I love this. I know we're not reading it, but it is the most renowned of all the deeds of war that the fathers of men wrought in behalf of the Eldar. It's big.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of like the 300 Spartans or something.
Oh, yeah.
Thermopylae.
Yeah. This is Hador.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, what's up with that typo? Can you believe that? I noticed that too.
I can't believe I fell for it. I'm just looking at
I meant to mention that to you because I'd caught it when I was reading through the chapter, and I was like, wait a minute, they mean Hador.
Yeah. But, and I know, of course, I know that. I know, but
yeah.
Just sitting here reading from the book and
oops. Yeah, I know. I would have done the same thing.
My ebook tells me it's that. It must be true.
You know what? Do you have your hard copy in front of you by any chance?
I do. Yeah.
I wonder if that error is in there too, or if it's just in the e-copy.
I'm going to find out.
But while you're looking that up, oh man. So Turgon, like you said, he retreats. He's got the men of Dor-lómin holding the rear guard, and he escapes and vanishes into the mountains and is hidden. And then I'm going to take the next fairly lengthy bit here. So that'll give you plenty of time to find that in the text.
I found it already, and before you do that error is not in the hard copy.
It is only in the e-copy. Oh, man. Yep. Well, there you go.
That's what we get for using technology.
There you go. That's our problem. But the brothers drew the remnant of the men of the house of Hador about them, and foot by foot they withdrew, until they came behind the fen of Serach, and had the stream of Rivil before them. There they stood, and gave way no more. Then all the hosts of Angband swarmed against them, and they bridged the stream with their dead, and encircled the remnant of Hithlum as a gathering tide about a rock. There, as the sun westered on the 6th day, and the shadow of arid Wethrin grew dark, Huor fell pierced with a venomed arrow in his eye, and all the valiant men of Hador were slain about him in a heap. And the orcs hewed their heads and piled them as a mound of gold in the sunset. Last of all, Hurin stood alone. Then he cast aside his shield and wielded an axe two-handed, and it is sung that the axe smoked in the black blood of the troll guard of Gothmog until it withered. And each time that he slew, Hurin cried, Aure Entuluva, day shall come again. 70 times he uttered that cry, but they took him at last alive by the command of Morgoth. For the orcs grappled him with their hands, which clung to him still, though he hewed off their arms, and ever their numbers were renewed, until at last he fell buried beneath them. Then Gothmog bound him and dragged him to Angband with mockery. Thus ended Nirnaeth Arnoediad, as the sun went down beyond the sea. Night fell in Hithlum, and there came a great storm of wind out of the west.
Before we talk about that, it's the first time I noticed trolls.
The troll
guard of Gothmog. Are trolls? I don't think trolls are mentioned earlier in this chapter.
I don't think they are either. I'm going to find that out since we're using our e-copies. We can do that, right?
Yeah.
No, they have not been mentioned.
So everything, all the things we talked about that are in this army, plus trolls. Yeah, they don't even mention trolls. The word trolls doesn't show up again until Of the Rings of Power in the Third Age. Really?
Yeah. But the troll guard of Gothmog.
So add to everything else, they have a troll guard.
They have a troll guard. Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Again, great job with the Quenya.
Well, this time was only 2 words.
True. And we talked about the fact that this is a reflection of the earlier statement by Fingon, and again, great for practicing your Quenya, but also great statement of hope. Again, day shall come again. And it will. And I think it will, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Huor has already said that a new star shall arise someday.
Yeah,
it's going to be a while, but I think Hurin heard. He heard what his brother said, and he's clinging to that. He knows that there is hope on the horizon somewhere, some win, and
some win.
And I love that. As you said before, this is a moment where elves and men, could fall into despair.
Yep.
But Hurin doesn't. He fights. He fights, though he knows that he can't win. But he keeps on fighting. And I love the fact that he throws away his shield.
Yep.
And he just wields his axe two-handed. Because he doesn't what good is a shield?
What good is defense at this point? Right.
Right, exactly. He's going to be slain or taken.
Yeah.
Might as well just kill as many as he can before that.
Exactly.
And so that's what he does. And 70 kills.
Well, remember, he's wiry, right? He's got incredible endurance. That's the thing about Hurin, is he's not as big as some of the other men of the same house. That's because of his mixed blood with the men of Breath.
Haladin,
with the Haladin, but
that's true.
He's got
so you could see him
endurance,
right? So you could see him swinging a big heavy axe and not having the weight of his own. The weight of his own bulk to swing around with it. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Incredible. And just picturing that scene, the idea of, how he eventually falls, because the orc's hands are still wrapped onto his legs and arms and torso.
Yeah.
Even though they're all just
that's
spurting
so crazy.
blood as they're
spreading this black blood.
Oh my goodness.
Smoking black blood just jetting off of him.
Wow. It's quite a scene, really.
It really is. I mean, every time orcs grab onto him, he just hacks off their hands. Wow.
I love the day shall come again thing, though. Totally reminds me of this song that Sam sings in the Tower of Cirith Ungol. He talks. There's a line here, and I was able to quickly pull it up. He says, "Though here at journey's end I lie in darkness buried deep, beyond all towers strong and high, beyond all mountains steep, above all shadows rides the sun, and stars forever dwell. I will not say the day is done, nor bid the stars farewell." There's something, I don't know why that just brings it back to me. It's the whole idea of day and not giving up hope. But it's just a beautiful moment.
Well, day is such a great metaphor for that, isn't it? Because
it is.
The day ends and the night is dark and cold and scary, but the day will always come again. I mean, it's a pretty much on the surface metaphor.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But it's beautiful for that, because it works so well. It's a great reminder of we may lose today, but there's tomorrow.
There is always going to be tomorrow.
Yeah.
And Gothmog binds him and drags him off with mockery. I can just see it now. I mean, hey, Hilrin.
Hey.
Real
Hey,
tough
Shorty.
guy there, aren't you? That last paragraph is interesting. It's almost a throwaway until you read it a little bit closer. Thus ended the Nirnaeth. The sun goes down, night falls, and there came a great storm of wind out of the west. I think there's a reason that's coming from the west.
What do you make of that? I mean, usually, this is the place where I would expect a wind to come out of the east, because that's usually where evil comes from. But what do you think about that?
I think it's over now. It's over now. And there's a wind coming from the west to clear it away.
You think this is sort of Manwë, maybe sort of kind of cleansing?
Starting that process.
Starting the process.
They've known this was going to come. They've known there was going to be a time where the Noldor were going to have to lose utterly. I don't know. I may be reading more. We do that, don't we? We got recently chastised about reading way too much into something.
Yeah, we do that.
But it's, that's kind of what we have to do.
Yeah. Well, it's, hey, we read into it, and sometimes we're on the money and sometimes we're not,
That's true.
But we wouldn't be us if we didn't at least ask the question.
We got to try every now and then.
Exactly.
Yeah, to me, it seems like the great storm of wind out of the west is symbolic of the Valar. Okay, this is done now, and now we're gonna start the next thing. We're gonna move on. We're moving forward.
I like that idea. The only counterpoint I have to that is it does continue to get worse for the next few chapters. So
that's true.
Maybe maybe it's a putting this battle behind them, but because I was about to say, well, yeah, they're at rock bottom, but
no, they're not.
No, they're not. So
well, maybe in Hithlum they are. Really, because Hithlum,
true.
Yeah, that's Fingon's people, and that's. But yeah, you're right. They're definitely not at their rock bottom as far as the elves are concerned. You get Doriath is going to have a little bit of an issue here, and then pretty soon Gondolin's going to have some problems. So,
well, what strikes me about this, you were about to see. Balerion is just overrun after this.
Oh, yeah.
It's the next few chapters are all about.
It's a bad neighborhood now. You don't want to go there anymore.
Right, exactly. And the next, sorry for the spoilers, but the next few chapters are just one elven kingdom after another just falling.
Yeah.
And it's
right.
It's no longer
Nargothrond, Doriath, and Gondolin. You're right.
Yeah. It's no longer about how they're building. It's about how they're collapsing,
falling apart.
Yeah. So
sorry. In case any of you are for our first time readers, we do apologize. Though I rather think that the chapter titles of the ruin of Doriath
by this point, I think people know that this book doesn't end that happily.
No.
Or at least the Quenta doesn't. Well, but it does.
It does, but it doesn't end well for the folks at this part of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I think there's something to your idea there. It's I think this is definitely some sort of response from the Valar. It has to be. There's some significance to this.
Out of the west, that's symbolic.
Definitely, because I did read this and I thought, well, that's weird. Why isn't it from the east? For some strange reason, I didn't even think about it being the Valar. But I think you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see. Maybe it's a sigh of grief. Maybe it's maybe it's a storm of anger. Maybe it's maybe it is a cleansing, sort of putting it behind him, as you say. It could be a number of different things.
You're right, and it is beautifully vague. It does give us that opportunity.
I like that.
To really, it's done that way on purpose, and it leaves us an opportunity to interpret it however we wish.
Yeah.
So we get the aftermath. We get that obviously Morgoth's very happy here. He's won. He pretty much got everything he wanted. Men took the lives of men, betrayed the elves, and now you get that point that the hearts of the elves are estranged, except from the Edain. And it's funny, save only those of those three houses. Well, those three houses are down to just about nothing.
That's true, because Beren is pretty much all that's left of the House of Beor, and now his son. And the Paladin are just a few folks in Brethil, and then Well, I take that back about the House of Beor. There are some living up in Hithlum, aren't there?
I think there are, well,
or Dorloman.
In Dorloman, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're going to get.
But yeah, you're right. I
trouble
mean,
there
there's
too,
just a
yeah.
few. There's
Just a
few
handful.
scattered little pockets. Yeah.
So, but let's go ahead and have you tell us a little bit more about the other parts of the aftermath here.
Okay. The realm of Fingon was no more, and the sons of Feanor wandered as leaves before the wind. Their arms were scattered, and their league broken, and they took to a wild and woodland life beneath the feet of Ered Lindon, mingling with the green elves of Osiriand, bereft of their power and glory of old. In Brethil some few of the Haladin yet dwelt in the protection of their woods, and Handir, son of Haldir, was their lord. But to Hithlum came back never one of Fingon's host, nor any of the men of Hador's house, nor any tidings of the battle and the fate of their lords. But Morgoth sent thither the Easterlings that had served him, denying them the rich lands of Beleriand which they coveted, and he shut them in Hithlum and forbade them to leave it. Such was the reward he gave them for their treachery to Maedhros, to plunder and harass the old and the women and the children of Hador's people. The remnant of the Eldar of Hithlum were taken to the mines of the north, and labored there as thralls, save some that eluded him and escaped into the wilds and the mountains.
Wow. Everybody's wiped out.
Yeah.
Fingon's realm, gone. Sons of Feanor, scattered.
Yeah.
They're hanging around with the green elves. I mean, wow, they've really gone downhill.
They've definitely gone downhill.
And they're slender bows.
Hithlum overrun by Easterlings,
Yeah.
who don't even particularly want to be there because they wanted Valerian.
Yeah, that's like thanks a lot. We thought we were going to get like Iowa and Missouri, and you gave us what, I don't know. I'm going to end up insulting somebody. You gave us Oklahoma. I mean, I just mean because it's not fertile land. I'm trying to. I guess it probably is. You gave me, I don't know.
Antarctica.
There we go. Please, because nobody lives there.
That was probably way too extreme, but just got to jump in there for you.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping me from insulting yet another state. I've never been to Oklahoma. I'm sure it's beautiful. And if I do, I shall find a Surrey with the fringe on top or something, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a Texan, so hey, you can say whatever you like.
Oh, I should have said just East Texas, because isn't East Texas pretty much not a place you'd want to live?
Well, West Texas.
It's West Texas. Yeah. That's right. I knew it was one of those East, West, blah, blah. I don't know.
I think it depends on what part of Texas you live in.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. The folks in West Texas would be like, nah, them East Texas folk. Yeah. No, but the idea here is that instead of being given these beautiful, lush green lands filled with, all the pastures and the farmland and the tilled soil that we've talked about.
And the tilled.
Now instead they're given this kind of almost subarctic land, very cold, not very fertile land.
Yeah.
So I guess Oklahoma was a bad example. Probably North Dakota would have been a better one.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just not.
And
great
all
land.
they have, and these are, this is a sort of I see the Easterlings as sort of a nomadic kind of plundering people, and all they're left with is plundering just
old people,
the old and the women and the children.
This is no fun.
You're right. Right. This is no fun. Exactly. They're kind of miserable about this, but hey, that's what you get for following the Dark Lord.
Yeah, I know exactly. You should have figured this out.
Yeah.
A few Eldar of Hithlum are captured. I guess these would have been elves that maybe weren't, well enough to fight in the battle. I don't know. Maybe they were just there to kind of hold down the home fort, so to speak. They're captured and taken to the mines.
Yeah.
A handful do escape and get out into the wilds.
Yeah, and we'll see a few of those later. I think, particularly in Unfinished Tales, don't we?
I think so.
Orcs
and wolves are freely just going wherever the heck they want. All the way down to Nantathrin, down to the land of willows, over all the way to the borders of Osiriand. The neighborhood really has gone downhill. Like you
really get the idea of Morgoth's forces are just overrunning Beleriand, and there's just these few pockets.
Very few pockets. There's a couple of gated neighborhoods left. Doriath,
quite literally,
Nargothrond, and these are just little gated communities, and But it's interesting.
It's
Morgoth gave small heed.
Doriath, Nargothrond, and Gondolin at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
really,
it.
those are the main ones.
That is it.
And then there's the
Well,
Phallus.
we're going to learn out. Yeah, well, for now, we're going to read about it in a moment.
Spoilers for a few sentences from for
now,
read now.
Actually, just about now. 'Cause I'm going to read that paragraph. Many now fled to the havens and took refuge behind Círdan's walls, and the mariners passed up and down the coast and harried the enemy with swift landings. But in the next year, ere the winter was come, Morgoth sent great strength over Hithlum and Nevrast, and they came down the rivers Brithon and Nenning, and ravaged all the Phallas, and besieged the walls of Brithombar and Eglarest. Smiths and miners and masters of fire they brought with them, and they set up great engines. And valiantly though they were resisted, they broke the walls at last. Then the havens were laid in ruin, and the tower of Barad Nimras cast down, and the most part of Círdan's people were slain or enslaved. But some went aboard ship and escaped by sea, and among them was Iranion Gilgalad, the son of Fingon, whom his father had sent to the havens after the Dagor Bragalach. This remnant sailed with Círdan south to the Isle of Balar. Gilgalad.
There you go.
We get to see Gilgalad. So
Yeah.
let's remember, he's the son of Fingon. That's
Right.
a really important role. So
Well,
not
yeah,
very many
since
of them
Fingon
escaped.
was High King of the Noldor, so
Yep, that's kind of the point. And we will see a Gilgalad into the second and third ages.
yeah,
Yeah,
just barely the third.
just
age,
barely
I
the
guess.
third age, like pretty much like a few seconds into the third age, right?
Right? Yeah, right. But yeah, I mean, anybody who's read Lord of the Rings, he was the captain of he was the High King of the Noldor at the Last Alliance. He was the captain, standing alongside Elendil.
Yes, he was. And his
A
spear.
good friend to
what
the
was his
Numenorian spear is called was it Iglos?
I think so. I'll have to look that up. But
We can't
so
just
the
let that
Phallas
sit
are
there
just-
without confirming it. Yeah.
No, the Phallas are destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to us about that a little bit. My goodness. So engines.
Yeah.
We're talking about siege engines here.
Yeah. All right.
No, I'm
At
just
the beginning
trying.
of tour.
No, I was saying, let's talk about that. Let's chat.
Oh, sorry. I thought you wanted me,
Oh,
sorry, I thought you
goodness.
wanted me to read ahead.
No, I wanted you to talk about the destruction here of the Phallas so that I could look up the name of the spear. And it is Iglos, of course, because you're always right.
No, except when I have nothing prepared on siege engines.
I just wanted to talk about this. So the engines are siege engines. So we're talking about like catapults or
Sure, yeah.
any sort of engines of war. So I mean, really, even a ram would be
Yeah.
counted as that. And so they eventually broke the walls.
And I wonder if, in miners, right? I mean, miners implies
Yes, they would have
explosives,
gone
doesn't
down
it?
under. They would have gone underneath, maybe, and weakened the walls from underneath. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Masters of fire.
Yeah, Masters of Fire. I mean, I do wonder if there's explosives or if it's more just like, what am I thinking of? Is it sappers, I think, that just sort of
Sappers,
dig under
yeah.
the walls and just kind of weaken the foundations. But
Yeah. Masters
whatever
of
it was,
fire.
he had a lot of it.
He did, yeah. Now, these are miners, not minas, just to get our Galaxy Quest reference in.
Yeah, miners, not
Minas. I mean, you almost reminded of Saruman with the gunpowder.
Definitely,
the
yeah.
Battle of Helm's Deep, and
Yeah.
bringing in some explosives to weaken the walls. Masters of Fire, yeah. I mean, you certainly think it's what you're thinking, some
Yeah.
sort of. I know that the fall of Gondolin in the history of Middle Earth, we learn that they have essentially explosives and
Right.
these great
And I,
vehicles.
think we saw explosives in the Ruin of Balerion, didn't we? I feel like we talked about them there.
Yeah, maybe. I
Maybe
don't
not. Maybe it was
remember.
just lava.
just lava,
Just lava.
just hot lava. But yeah, so even the last place that they could escape has been wiped out, and they escape again. So this time they get down to the Isle of Balar. So it's a long ways away.
Yeah, it's and I don't have my map up in front of me, but I guess I'm just going to look at the book. It's really south and a bit east.
Very far south,
of the Phallas,
southwest, I think, isn't it? Southwest of the Falas?
Southeast of the Falas.
Southeast. Oh, okay, because the shore.
It's just the shape of the shore. Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Because Valar is just
exactly.
right in the bay from the mouths of Sirion.
So it's very, very far south.
Very far south. Yeah, this was. I mean, it had to just be the closest refuge they could find.
Yeah. But you look at how far south that is. That is as far south of Nargothrond as Nargothrond is south of Gondolin. I mean, looking at the scale of the map.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a long ways away.
Yeah.
Actually, even further than that when you look at it. I
think you're right. Yeah.
Big, big distance.
It's a long way.
Yeah. But it's an island out in a bay, and they're able to make some ships. And now I'll have you read.
I was really excited to read this.
You were.
Passage.
Well, of course you were, because we know where this all heads.
Yeah. At the bidding of Turgon, Círdan built 7 swift ships, and they sailed out into the west. But no tidings of them came ever back to Valar, save of one and the last. The mariners of that ship toiled long in the sea, and returning at last in despair, they foundered in a great storm within sight of the coast of Middle-earth. But one of them was saved by Ulmo from the wrath of Ase, and the waves bore him up and cast him ashore in Nevrast. His name was Voronwë, and he was one of those that Turgon sent forth as messengers from Gondolin.
I think I mentioned Voronwë earlier, and clearly he went out with the second group of ships, so my bad.
Right. You can be forgiven for not remembering exactly which group of ships he went with.
I just know that he went and was the only one to come back.
And it's the only one that came back, yep.
Yeah, 7 ships. I can hear Princess Buttercup, oh, but your 7 fastest.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, the mariners of that ship.
I kind of thought we were done with Princess Bride references after the last one. But
I thought we were too, but we're probably never done.
Never, ever done as it should be.
I love that Ulmo saves Voronwë from the wrath of Ose.
Yeah, it's almost like he's got a plan or something, doesn't it?
Ulmo. It's almost like Ulmo has a role to play.
Yeah. It's almost like Voronwë is going to do something. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know what. Yeah, we'll get to that. Luckily, that's, I think, 4 or 5 episodes from now before we get to that. So we'll have plenty of time to warn our listeners that they need to pick up Unfinished Tales and read of Tuor in the coming, at his coming to Gondolin. But, yes, Voronwë, very important.
Very important later on.
We'll definitely get to that.
Yeah.
And now we get to something that probably should be in the next chapter, but is in this one, and we'll be happy to discuss it.
This chapter is bookended by stuff that probably should be in the other chapters.
It really is. Let me go ahead and take the next couple paragraphs here. Now the thought of Morgoth dwelt ever upon Turgon, for Turgon had escaped him, of all his foes, that one whom he most desired to take or to destroy. And that thought troubled him, and marred his victory. For Turgon of the mighty house of Fingolfin was now by right king of all the Noldor, and Morgoth feared and hated the house of Fingolfin, because they had the friendship of Ulmo his foe, and because of the wounds that Fingolfin gave him with his sword. And most of all his kin, Morgoth feared Turgon. For of old in Valinor his eye had lighted upon him, and whenever he drew near, a shadow had fallen on his spirit, foreboding that in some time that yet lay hidden, from Turgon, ruin should come to him. Therefore Hurin was brought before Morgoth, for Morgoth knew that he had the friendship of the king of Gondolin. But Hurin defied him and mocked him. Then Morgoth cursed Hurin and Morwen and their offspring, and set a doom upon them of darkness and sorrow. And taking Hurin from prison, he set him in a chair of stone upon a high place of Thangorodrim. There he was bound by the power of Morgoth, and Morgoth, standing beside him, cursed him again, and he said, "Sit now there, and look out upon the lands where evil and despair shall come upon those whom thou lovest. Thou hast dared to mock me, and to question the power of Melkor, master of the fates of Arda. Therefore with my eyes thou shalt see,
and with my ears thou shalt hear, and never shalt thou move from this place until all is fulfilled unto its bitter end.
And even so, it came to pass. But it is not said that Hurin asked ever of Morgoth either mercy or death for himself or for any of his kin.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to learn a whole lot more about that curse and the doom and the... Yeah, that's coming up.
And the eyes with my eyes and with my ears. I think we're going to be spending a lot of time going back to these couple of paragraphs as we go into the next story.
Yeah, especially that second one. But before we spend time on that curse, let's look at that first paragraph. I love this. First of all, once again, we see fear. Morgoth feared Turgon. Morgoth feared and hated the house of Fingolfin. And I love the reasons. It's because Ulmo is their friend, and because of the wounds, that Fingolfin gave him with his sword 7 times. But even he gets that little foreboding.
Turgon most of all. Yeah, he knew. I love that even back in Valinor, he just when he looked on Turgon, he just kind of thought,
bad thing.
That guy's going to be the death of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's funny is he thinks that somehow maybe, if I can just find him and kill him, he won't be the death of me. Because, of course, he thinks he is the master of the fates of Arda. But he's not.
No.
Is he?
No, he's not. No.
That's the thing. I mean, that really ties in because here he claims to Hurin to be the master of the fates of Arda, and yet he realized, Turgon is part of the fate of Arda. And Morgoth doesn't get to do anything about him. Doesn't get to. Well, he does, but he doesn't stop the ruin that will come to him from
Turgon. Yeah, so I love the use of Master of the Fates of Arda because that echoes, a word in the title of the next chapter.
Yes, it does. Yes,
which we'll get to that in due time.
Yeah.
But again, I kind of wish that had been in the next chapter.
I know. I love that go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Well, I was going to just talk about. That's all right. No, I was just going to talk about, we talked when Turgon actually let Hurin and Huor leave Gondolin.
Yeah.
We talked about, the questioning, whether that was the right decision for him to make.
They knew it existed. Even if they didn't know how to get there, they knew.
They knew it existed. And that was going to make them vulnerable. It was going to make them targets.
The region of the world. I mean, they would have known that it wasn't in Osirian, that it wasn't in, the land of the Willows. They knew that it was up in the mountains somewhere in that area.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so, here we see that, Morgoth goes after Hurin because he is trying to get to Turgon.
Mm-hmm.
And because he mocked him.
And because he defied him.
There's that too. But,
oh, man.
Yeah,
you dared to mock me. I love how he refers to himself as Melkor.
I like that too. Yeah.
It's a reminder. Morgoth is a slam. He's the dark enemy of the world. That's the name that Fëanor gave him after the Silmarils were stolen and Finwë was killed.
Right.
But
that's
Morgoth's not going to call himself that. No, Melkor.
Yeah, no, of course. He's still going to call himself He Who Arises in Might.
Exactly. And master of the fates of Arda and the rightful lord of Middle Earth.
Right. And I named this unto myself, and I named this unto
myself, and over there that unto myself. Yes. Yeah, he's got a little bit of a high vision of where he stands.
Oh yes,
Not to say he isn't powerful. He is. He's still the most powerful individual entity in Middle Earth.
Right.
And possibly in Arda, though.
Possibly in Arda, although given how much of his power
he would have been.
I don't think at this point. Yeah.
No, that's the whole point. But boy, this curse. I mean, we're not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight because that really is the heart and soul of the next chapter.
Yeah.
But we want to look at this. This is a curse not just on Hurin, but on his wife Morwen and on their offspring. And what is the curse, or what is the doom? It is a doom of darkness and sorrow.
Yep.
And evil and despair are going to come upon them.
Yeah.
And then he has to see it through Melkor's eyes and hear it through Melkor's ears. And that's twisted too.
We know because we know what Hurin has said about the guile of Morgoth just earlier in this chapter.
Exactly. He knows full well that Morgoth is full of trickeration, if you will. And, he's not, it's not going to be an accurate vision. This is going to be,
twisted
a slanted
to Morgoth's
vision.
Purpose.
Exactly. It made me think, and I think I even talked about this in one of my essays, or maybe it was, I don't know if it was essay or book week thing, but we were talking about the Palantir. I know this is in Hope and Despair.
I think it was, I remember that.
It was, because, Denethor saw things through Sauron's eyes.
Through Sauron's eyes, yeah.
Because Sauron only allowed him to see what he allowed him to see.
Right.
And it may have been factually accurate, but it lacked all context and it lacked explanation to make it fit into what was going to be happening. And here it's going to be the same thing. He has to endure seeing all this, that we're going, all the deep, dark tragedy we're going to see in the next chapter, through the eyes of the most evil entity to ever walk the face of Arda. Mm-hmm. What a terrible fate.
Yeah.
And yet he never asks for mercy or death.
Yet Hurin never asked for mercy or death.
Not even for
not even for for himself or for his children. He held on to, I think, a good kind of pride and a good kind of valor.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a bad kind of valor, but what I'm trying to say.
But there is a bad kind of pride. I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll learn more, I think, when we look into the lay version as well, or maybe when we look into some of the extended texts that come in the Children of Hurin novel. But
there's a lot of it in there. That's true.
There's a certain trust in Iluvatar and in the nature of man as created by Iluvatar that I think drives Hurin here to withstand. But
okay, cool.
We'll get to that. And boy, will we. So, we're not going to read the last bit because we'll talk about the Hill of Tears a little bit more in the next chapter. But just know that it's there. This is the orcs gather all the bodies of the elves and men, and they pile them all together. And it would be, of course, a huge mound. I mean, if you think about how many elves and men would have died, it's their bodies and their harnesses and weapons. Yeah, this is just a massive hill.
It was like a hill. It could be seen from afar. Yeah, it was huge.
So it's called Howth en Dengen or Howth en Nirnaeth, the Hill of the Slain or the Hill of Tears. I do love that, just like we see sometimes, there's that symbolism that grass grew there.
That little bit of nature coming back into something, a little bit of life there. Yeah. And a little bit of hope.
Yeah, that's true. Because no creature of Morgoth is ever going to go there. Yeah. Because of the grass that grew there, and the swords of the Eldar and the Edain are underneath. We'll see it again. And in fact, I think for the next chapter, I want to make sure we put a link up to that beautiful piece of Rian at the Hill of Tears. You know which one I'm talking about?
I'm sure I've seen. I can't remember having seen one of her.
It's
to look for it for next time.
Yeah, it's a Naismith. It's a Naismith painting.
Okay.
If you have the illustrated copy of the Silmarillion, you'll have it in that book, in that volume.
Oh, okay. I'll go take a look.
I'm surprised to say this because we're still short of 2 hours, but that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. As always, we thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, and join us again next time when we probably go over 2 hours again by going deep into another of the anchor stories of the Silmarillion. Yep, next time it's going to be starting chapter 21 of Turin Turambar. And if you thought this chapter was depressing, folks, well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Well, that's true. We know that Tolkien wanted fairy stories to always have that happy ending, that eucatastrophe. Well, let me just tell you, Turin is not a fairy story. It is a tragedy. We're going to give this the same treatment that we gave Chapter 19. Because of its length, we're going to go ahead and split this up into 3 episodes, but hopefully we'll keep it interesting for you. We've got some great themes to delve into, especially fate and free will, which is one of our favorites to talk about, and we'll look for some chances to bring in some poetry from the lay as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a great idea if we can do that. This is another story that Tolkien wrote a few different versions of, a couple of prose versions and the verse, the Lay of the Children of Hurin. I think we're going to find ways to bring in elements of all of those if we can, including the standalone novel, The Children of Hurin, which I think a lot of.
Yeah, most certainly. And we'll focus primarily on the version in the text, as we did with Beren and Luthien. So if you only read one thing, make it that.
Yep, definitely. And so, on that note, for this first episode, we're going to cover through the section break that's on page 209 of our edition of the Silmarillion. It's the passage that ends with, "Thus did Turin come to Nargothrond."
And remember, if you're reading along and want to take notes, and we encourage you to do that, don't mark up your first editions. Go to the library tab on our website, theprancingponypodcast.com, and you'll find links to cheap paperbacks, audiobooks, music CDs, a whole bunch of cool things, and we'd really appreciate you, if you need to buy those things, to buy them through those links.
Yep, and you can also support us by leaving a review on iTunes. Even if you don't listen to us on iTunes, you can leave us a review. All you need is a few moments and an Apple ID. And if you haven't done so already, you can subscribe on iTunes or through your favorite podcast app. We're also on Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, and most other podcast directories.
And a big thank you to those of you who have left reviews and who are connecting with us on social media. We call this the Prancing Pony Podcast for a reason. We love the common room, and that's why we have it on Facebook at the Prancing Pony Podcast and on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod.
And social media is a great place to share our podcast as well. So please retweet us, share us, tell your friends.
We count on that. And one last thing, as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, or recordings of your friends trying to pronounce Nirnaeth Arnoediad to the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com. Well, an hour 50 is still far too short a time to spend among such admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.